Welcome to Punchline Talks, the Business Breakfast Briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the modern newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. We've kind of changed it slightly because today the charity sector has never been under so much pressure. So I brought a panel of charity experts let's talk about that. Let's talk about the charity experts. So the panel today is Joanna Hammond. She's the CEO of Cotswold Friends. The charity supports almost 2,300 clients with vital community service. We've got Julie Kent, MBE, Trustee of the Pied Piper Appeal. Julie Kent, Charitable Trust, and this year she was appointed to Gloucestershire's High Sheriff. We got Talitha Nelson. She's the CEO of Gloucestershire's Community Foundation. They deliver 3.5 million in grants, supporting and reaching 380,000 people in Gloucestershire communities. And finally, we've got Baroness Rennie Fritchie DBE is known for extensive contributions to public service, education, charitable causes, and although she's retired, she is currently the ambassador of Age UK for Gloucestershire. And also I've got written down here, Baroness, that you are operates a small fabric, wool and haberdashery shop in Dursley.
No, never.
But that goes to show that...
I am patron of Winston's Wish, and I'm patron of Gloucester Rugby Foundation, and involved in a range of organisations in addition to Age UK.
This goes to show that you should not believe everything that ChatGPT says to you. That's it. But that's what you got down there. Okay, let's see what's happening in the papers today, courtesy of the BBC. Guys, can you all see this? Okay, let's go through the Guardian. Protests as ministers prepare to sign values-free Gulf states deal. The Telegraph, Harmer calls to quit ECHR, like rise of Nazism. The Times, I've picked the top story of the Times. Rees ready to rip up spending rules in Red Wall splurge. The Daily Mail, Cammy Blast race to the bottom on welfare handouts. The Sun, ex-Royal Marine charged over parade horror. The Daily Star, face of cop parade suspect. The Mirror, 7 charges. The Financial Times, Trump's vows to fight on in trade war after court rules tariff blitz and is illegal. The Metro, the end of the world is nigh. The Daily Express, NHS rolls out world first cancer test. The PIP disability claimants as key Labour areas of greatest risk of welfare. Okay, let's go to the panel, see what they picked out for the papers today. Let's start with you today, please, Julie. What have you picked out for us?
Well, I've picked out an article about France planning to ban cigarettes in public places. They say the reason is to protect children. So it will be banned smoking in all outdoor places that can be frequented by children, including beaches, parks, bus stops. 75,000 people apparently in France died with cigarette-related diseases. 6 out of 10 people support the restrictions, which is good. And now Spain are also going to consider the same thing. But I was going to say, as I was reading it, I was thinking about the consulate cigarettes, all white, that I used to smoke when I was about 14 or something down the road. And I was thinking, I wonder how many people on this today actually smoked when they were younger. Mark?
And I bet you looked really cool when you smoked those white menthol cigarettes.
I thought I looked cool, yeah.
Yes,
definitely love the social smoke. Yeah, definitely. I'm a 90s party girl, so for me, smoking, social smoking. But then I didn't do it on my own. It was really just social. And then I gave up at 23.
I remember sitting on the back of a plane. I remember sitting on the back of a plane from Belize to Florida, smoking a cigar. You can imagine.
Actually,
you can't imagine
when I told our children that my husband and I both smoked, I would buy a packet of 200 on a Friday night. I mean, I was gigging a lot at that time, so I was in the kind of jazz and music scene, and by Monday morning they'd all gone. And when I said we used to smoke on the back of a plane, they couldn't believe it. Or in the cinema. In the cinema, we used to smoke. How could we see the screen?
I know, it's shockingly bad, isn't it?
Anyway,
okay, Julie, let's go back to the news. Research shows parents, they know best.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It's come from a young girl who's called Martha, who died at King's College Hospital, London. Her parents kept, she was only 13, her parents kept saying, no, it's not right, there's something not right. And so they did some research in Australia. They actually questioned 190,000 visits of children to A&E. And the research shows that actually parents must be much more part of the care system in the hospital. You know, they're not listened to. Probably the medics think, oh God, you know, just a parent. But apparently they do know their own children, and it should be part of the whole care that they get in hospital. And obviously, you know, I've lost a child in hospital, and I know that, but it's just then more pressure on the NHS, and we don't really want to get into that because that could be ages and ages. But I just think very interesting.
Okay, thanks ever so much. Great story, Julie. Joe, great to have you on the show. What have you picked out for us, please?
All right, thank you. Well, I've picked out a story about the Nationwide and how their high street branches are thriving. So this is around 700 branches being committed to be kept open until the start of 2028, which from the papers is suggesting that an extra 200,000 more customers are now using its branches. But the reason that I noted the story was because in the rural areas that we work in, particularly in the North Cotswolds, then barriers to housing and service and access are real critical issues on a daily basis. So it's quite interesting to see how this particular model sort of reflected upon the issues that we're seeing with closing post offices and closing local banks that really have quite an impact, particularly on older people that may not be able to use the services from a digital point of view. So that was one of my stories.
I think it's fantastic, by the way, just very quickly, I'd like to bring in that. And also the fact that businesses in particular using cash, that's why less companies use cash now, because they've got nowhere safe to bank it, especially in rural areas.
Yeah, and that's the same for us as well.
You can't, if you go to a coffee shop, you can't buy a coffee. They say
no.
Contactless only.
That's right. Okay, Joe, what's the other story you picked?
I also had one in relation to the fact that grocery price inflation has surged to 4.1%, the highest it's been since February last year. And again, that's leaning into some of the cost of living issues. We're supporting a lot of people with cost of living related, signposting them on to where they can get support. But again, it's just a nod to the fact that the Cotswolds is sort of broadly seen as a wealthy area, but it's to note that there are areas of hidden poverty. There was a study done not so long back by Professor Stephanie Denning, and she was looking at the fact that there are sort of small and key and pocket areas of hidden poverty and deprivation around the Cotswolds. It's important to recognise that for the people that live there.
Is there a particular area in the Cotswolds that's really bad?
There are some areas it's kind of spread across, and there are more pockets in particular areas of the towns that we're working across. So we're working with Cotswold District Council to do some work around trying to identify more carefully where some of those are.
Yeah, okay, thank you ever so much for that. Rennie, what have you picked out for us, please?
The first thing I've picked out is from The Guardian, and it's a new AI test that's led to a prostate cancer drug to look at what would be effective. But what that led me to be thinking about was all things digital. Now, not just the issue of older people and getting online and all of that, but it's about the rules that we have around digital are old-fashioned. One of my previous roles, I was chair of Nominet, which is the .uk domain registry, for about 7 years. And those sorts of organizations say, we're like your postman. You know, you use us, .uk or .com, but we deliver. We don't interfere with the messages. We can't possibly. You don't expect your postman to open every letter to make sure it's safe. Well, we're just the postman. And I think that's an old-fashioned way of looking at it. In that it led me to think when we first got motor cars, we used to measure the speed of the motor car in horsepower. So we were using old technology in new technology. And I think we're doing that with digital. We have to have a national conversation about who needs to be safe and what rules do we need to have to govern things in a proper way so that digital is safe. And my second one is from the Church Times, and that's about young people. All the messages from the Church Times are about the church isn't in decline. In fact, people are rising going to church, but it's mainly young people. And I thought that was fantastic. It seems to me that young people today are saying there has to be a purpose. We have to be, we're part of something bigger. And whatever religion or not people have, they need to have a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning and something to connect to. And for people of my generation, which is older than most of your generations, the church was the place you went to church, but you went to the youth club. And the youth club was the place that we did all sorts of amazing things, met people, did trips, did plays, did all sorts of things. And it was, and so I'm really delighted that more young people are looking for faith-based, whatever the faith is, faith-based meaning in their lives. And I think that's a good thing.
That's a great thing. No, thank you ever so much for that one. Talitha, what have you picked out, please?
The BBC News has highlighted again the level of child poverty numbers have reached a record high. So nationally, we've now been really under pressure to start looking at, I guess the government is looking at the 2-child benefit limit, which is trending at the moment, and the debate around if we remove it, is it going to fuel a welfare state? But actually the reality of the amount of people that they're targeting with the new benefit systems, they're saying another 250,000 people will be plummeted in poverty, including another 50,000 children. So child poverty is now at an all-time high. It's absolutely reflected in the county and the research we've done at GCF. A third of children are living in poverty in our lovely wealthy county. It really needs to highlight the action we need to take to reduce poverty, and certainly where Joanna talks about rural poverty, it's a huge issue around the access to services. So the Cotswolds being a lovely wealthy place, there are huge amounts of pockets of deprivation which isn't picked up with national statistics, and I think where the government uses lazily things like indices of deprivation, it doesn't pick up all the issues we have in our particular county, and certainly not nationally. But I think it's alarming now. If you think of looking at a schoolroom and a third of those children are living in poverty, it's pretty frightening and alarming. So we're doing what we can locally, but it's a national issue. And I think the pressure on making sure this government makes decisions that don't plummet more children into poverty.
Okay, I think we'll stop there. That's a great lead into the overall discussion. We want to talk about charities, actually. Let's just put things in context, Tilly. Let's start with you. Where are we? How many charities are there in Gloucestershire? I think it's around 3,000, but how many are there? And what sort of pressures are they under at this moment? How are you seeing things?
Around 2,500 charities, but up to 4,000, including community groups and CICs, so and non-constituted groups. It's the golden thread that runs through our society and certainly in our county. And if you think without those charities and organisations, people would further slip through the gaps because there is absolutely nowhere else for them to give. So we have to really get across to ordinary public that charities are not just a nice to have. They're not sitting around baking cakes and having a lovely time, which is great. They're actually doing life-saving and life-changing work, which absolutely there's a debate around, are we taking away the work the state should be doing? But actually in the absence of the state, our charities are absolutely vital, and the volunteers, and I think the Benefact Group, the last piece of research they've done around the economic value is we put 22 billion a year into the economy, and we're not even talked about in the budget. We are a huge sector that delivers value. So if you're looking at funding around resources and fundraising plus voluntary hours, it adds up to 22 billion. Now that is phenomenal, and as a sector we're absolutely forgotten on the national picture in terms of financial budgets and how are we going to keep this sector going. And actually the finances are even tighter now. The need has risen up to 30% in some of our charities, and fundraising has declined rapidly. So money's declining and increase in need is going up. So it is a pressure cooker.
Talitha, that's great. A link into Joanne. Joe, can you just very briefly tell us about your charity and the pressures that you're under now, rise of national insurance contributions, how that affects you? How many people do you employ as well? So can you just give us a viewpoint on that, please?
Yeah, of course. Cotswold Friends is a charity based in the North Cotswolds, but also serving some of the South Cotswolds community. We have around 2,400 older and vulnerable clients that we support with our different community-based services. And our vision is that no older or vulnerable person in the Cotswolds should be lonely or isolated. So all our services work around keeping people connected to community in various ways, whether that's with transport, with community activities, or one-to-one support like befriending and carer support. So all of those services are aimed towards that, to make sure that people stay connected to their communities and don't get lonely or isolated in our rural communities. But going back to what Talitha's just been saying and what you're mentioning there is a great deal of pressure on charities at the moment. So the suggestion there that we have rising costs, but we also have pressures on receiving funding to balance. We've mentioned just there that there have been the changes to the employer's national insurance recently, which has impacted. We have around 25 staff. We all work in part-time roles. So as a charity, we're around 12 to 13 full-time equivalent. And that has had quite a big impact on our wage bill. And the wages for a lot of charities are generally one of, well, if not the much largest proportion of the costs that we have. So it has the bigger impact in relation to that. And of course, we've also had the minimum wage increase. We're a living wage employer to support our staff team. And I think it's about 6.7% that the minimum wage went up, which has added financial pressures again. So our funding comes from a variety of sources, but it's statutory funding, which is only less than a third of what we need to raise as a charity. But also then applying to grants and trusts and local support like Talitha's Gloucestershire Community Foundation. And also then what we can raise ourselves in terms of trying to progress our sustainable fundraising by working with our local communities, who are fantastic.
Can I ask you how much has your wage bill gone up?
I haven't got the exact number with me, but we're probably in the region of 6 to 7, 8%.
Okay, so thousands of pounds basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the thing about this, the government obviously trying to do good thing, raising wages and national insurance, but the costs on all businesses are and of course, it doesn't move you forward, does it? It's just an added cost. And I think that's the big thing.
I think that's exactly right, because, as far as Cotswold Friends is concerned, we're fundraising each year to keep the charity going. So we will start each year with a deficit in terms of what we need to fund the charity for the year. And I think that's a common position for many charities to be in. So when changes come in like this, then obviously you have a larger funding gap to try and achieve through the year. So you have to put more resource into that to make sure you can continue to fund the charity going forwards, so you can keep delivering your community services.
As chief exec, it must be terribly not depressing, but must add an extra burden on you.
Yeah, it does add an extra burden, but obviously we're aware that as a charity we do fundraise to continue to provide the services that we provide. It is difficult when the costs of various things continue to increase, because that will obviously increase the pressure on the charity. But we work hard to try and work with all people locally across Gloucestershire to fundraise for what we do. It's keeping those connections wherever we can to our local communities.
No, thanks ever so much, Dan. Great insight there. Julia, let's bring you in. Obviously, we've known each other a long, long time, and the fantastic work we did with Pied Piper and Emily's Gift. You're now the High Sheriff. You've got the opportunity to go round the county. It's the sort of thing that you're seeing on the, on the coalface of the charities and all the different ones that you see.
Like Joanna says, they are all worried. They're all struggling, and I've been so far. I went to Bleddington, which I'd never heard of before, the most easterly village, absolutely beautiful, and went to a sort of CIC cafe. Someone gave a piece of land and they built this cafe, and now it's a sort of community hub where people go and have a chat. As Bern and I were stood there, everyone that came in, they knew, and they have sell produce and absolutely everything. And then I've been to the Churn project in Cirencester, where they offer so much to young people, old people, absolutely everything. And I was taking a check to them actually, but I think fundraising is not the same as it was, because even putting on an event to raise money now costs so much more than it did years ago. We've got 2 charity shops at Pied Piper. The donations aren't as good because people will sell it on Vinted now. So what they would have donated to the shop, I had a big bag and I said to my daughter, show me how to put this on Vinted. To be honest, I can't be bothered. It's going to the shop, but lots of people will come and buy stuff from the shop and then put it on Vinted and make money. So it's a very different, and businesses also, because they're struggling, and Gloucestershire is amazing, and Gloucester and Cheltenham for Pied Piper, there are businesses that have always supported us, sponsored an event. Even they are saying, actually, this year we may not be able to do that. So it's affecting all charities and reserves. You know, they're worried about their reserves. They might have had 4 months or 6 months reserves, and now they're worried that it's getting really close to the mark. So yeah, it's
an ongoing challenge.
It's very challenging.
Sorry, Joe, what did you say?
I was just saying it's definitely an ongoing challenge for all charities.
Yeah.
Okay, let's bring you in, Rennie, because obviously you've been involved in the charity sector for all your life, as well as the unis and things. What do you think? Is there a time that perhaps there should be a commission, Gloucestershire, to try and link all these together? Because I sometimes think you all work in different silos. And what's your view on that?
I mean, there is the VCSE and there is Matt Leonard and the umbrella organization that we can get free training and all sorts of things. But I think if I take a more strategic look, because we've heard some really powerful detail, and Talitha's talking about the 22 billion. If I go back to COVID, during COVID, statutory organizations were just flummoxed, stuck, didn't know what to do, how to do it. Now, charities, we had old digital, so we weren't up to date. We had more people needing services that couldn't get them anywhere else. So we had our usual clients, then extra people, less money, and we pivoted on a sixpence to look at what are the needs, what can we do, let's get out there, let's do something. And we began to be taken seriously in a slightly different way by the statutory organisations that we'd been saying for ages, sit round the table with us when you're deciding things, not at the end when you've decided it and you tell us what you want us to do. Let's have a conversation. And so during those 2 or 3 years, we worked together in a really, really good way. And I'm worried that some of that is disappearing and we're moving into the old ways of doing things. So thinking together, working together, looking at what we can do together, and the whole business of raising money. Well, absolutely. The funders, the trusts, the foundations, their boards have said there's less money around. We need to give less money to more people, but we're going to focus it more tightly. So that makes life very difficult for charities to know what to apply for. Then businesses are going through the tough time that Julie was talking about, and they have to say, is this what we want to be supporting, or is there a greater need? And in the old days, funders, people who gave big chunks of money in businesses, were looking for doing good, making a difference, but also some kind of halo effect, some kind of this is us and it shows how good we are that we care about this. And so they would invest in projects. Now, projects are never costed properly in charities. People want to pay for this thing, but they don't want to pay for the heating, the lighting, the office, the travel of volunteers. So you have to find a way to get that money. More funders now are looking at unrestricted funding, which is saying, we've done our due diligence, we believe in you as a charity, we know you're good, we'll give you the money to do whatever you need to do, and we're not looking for a big project with our name on it. And we need more people to be doing that sort of thing in Gloucestershire, but across the piece, so that we can work together.
Do you feel, though, not being funny, I know a lot of these businesses that Julia talked about, Talitha, and, that give all the time. And I think the problem is they're all under pressure, and it's almost like that pot is dried up. and you need to find new people, who possibly don't give so much. Does that make sense? And where do you find those people? I don't know, Julie. Is that something
Well,
that you're finding?
I had to do that when I raised the £500,000 for Emily's gift, because obviously I didn't want to go back to the Pied Piper givers, because that was going to take it away from Pied Piper. So I had to contact businesses. I mean, I literally networked breakfast, lunch, evening, absolutely everything, and met masses of new businesses, and who have now become friends, actually, because I've got to know them. So, and worked with them. And it's been quite handy, because that's also brought some new businesses into Pied Piper as well. So yeah, it's networking, trust.
I'm going to bring
Not,
Joe
not just
in.
money, Mark. We can go
Yeah.
to all sorts of, some of those bigger businesses, if they haven't got the money, we can say, can we have some of your people as volunteers? Can you give them 3 paid days a year to volunteer? Can we do other things together? So it's not just cash, it's care, connection, concern, support, speaking up. And that makes a big difference too.
Yeah, I think
That's it.
philanthropy, if we talk about philanthropy, which is a dirty word in this country because it's very American, but about giving back, it's not just about money. And I think the piece around Community Foundation Network, it's about resources. What are the resources we have in our county other than money? We've got something called the Invest programme, where we've done mentoring and we've set up pro bono. And the pro bono piece, working with our big businesses, is what skills have you got? Because actually, when we survey our charities, we say, how can we support you in ways other than funding? And there's a big list of things. We've got the lawyers now doing pro bono legal work. We've got a marketing, the marketing department offering. And I think it's about mobilizing resource. And that's where we've put a program together that brings that together, because it's quite, time consuming to try and match charities and pro bono up. But it works amazingly. And actually, those organisations who don't have necessarily the money, like Renee says, they've got some people with some time, and time is valuable. And volunteering is massively valuable. And if you speak to someone like the Citizens Advice, they say, Talitha, we don't need any more money. I need 100 volunteers. The debt calls we're getting, I need 100 volunteers. So yes, it's about mobilising the resources in our county.
I would completely agree with that, because I think sometimes we're in a position where, as a small to medium-sized charity, we won't necessarily have the skill set for certain areas like legal and things like that. So if you do have services where you can dip in and out of that, or that's supported by business, that's really fantastic. And as you say, it's not necessarily just money, it's other support that can help the charity, such as some time, some services. We work with a few people that have provided event spaces and things like that. Excuse me.
So I think sometimes it's what you're saying is about thinking outside the box, isn't it?
I think also we're very lucky at Pied Piper. We have 12 trustees, and we've got a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. And so they come on as trustees, and we then don't expect them to charge us for anything. But I've also, when I was out networking last year and I was stood in front of 20 business people, I'd say, you all have talents that charities need. It's really hard to get good trustees for charities. And I'd say to them, please, something that's close to you, find a charity and ask them if they're looking for trustees or an accountant or whatever.
That's hugely valuable.
The trouble is that with businesses at the moment, every single business I talk to, they're working longer, harder with less resources and less money. So although they'd like to, I mean, I personally cannot stretch myself any further. No matter, there comes a point where you're just going to break. And it's same with being governors of schools, all this sort of stuff, really.
But there's a payback here, Mark. It's not just we're all stretched and we can't afford it. Saying to the HR people or the workplace people, who have you got that you think might go places in this organisation? Junior manager might move into senior management, and as part of their training and development, helping to make strategic plans, make decisions, do things. They could come and help us do that.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't have to pay for them to go on a training course, because they'd be doing good, developing skills, developing networks, and becoming far more equipped to be the next big person you need in your own organisation.
And Renee's really right. We work with Charles Russell Speechley, and they're
Yeah.
developing their associates, and 2 of them are working with me on the Community Investor Fund. And pro bono, they've given us pro bono to set up a community garden in Gloucester. Without their pro bono, around £4,000, it wouldn't have got off the ground.
Yeah.
And they're using their young associates, because they have proper development programs within the business, and their associates are working with us, and they're loving it, these young associates. One of the associates does all the pro bono work. So when they have pro bono work, which they do need to take on a certain amount, they're giving it to the associates. The associates are getting a chance to develop. So like Renee says, if you've got a business where you want to develop young people or the next generation, coming and supporting and working with charities strategically is the best growth opportunity. It's really exciting. So it's not just about the leaders necessarily having to give up their time, but what about the rest of the people in their team they're developing?
And also, the main thing is, Mark, that giving back releases endorphins that make you feel good. And its research shows that volunteers giving improves people's mental health.
Exactly.
Well, just very clear. Joe has so many volunteers. Joe, let's finish this sector with your volunteers and what they contribute to your charity and other charities.
Yeah, I mean, the way that our charity runs, we couldn't do what we do at all without our volunteers, because our staff team basically facilitate the work that the volunteers do out into the community. So the volunteers are driving the cars, they're visiting people in their homes, they're running the lunch groups, and they are the most amazing people. And just leaning into what you've said there about giving back, we talk to our volunteers all the time, and they tell us that it is so satisfying for them, and they can use their skills, their life skills, to support us as a charity and to support our clients. And just one more comment there about what Talitha was saying about the economic value of volunteers. We do some calculations each year on how many hours our volunteers are giving. And last year's calculation came out at the living wage to giving back almost £500,000 to the local.
Wow.
It's
Absolutely
huge when you calculate the number of hours that they give, and we can't thank them enough. We can never appreciate them enough. They're fantastic.
No, thanks so much, guys. We're running out of time already, unfortunately. I'm going to quickly go and ask you all for your pick of the punchlines. Let's start with you, Rennie. What have you picked out for punchline this week, please?
A couple of things, but fly tipping was one of your articles, and I was thinking about. I was connecting that to affordable housing, because we've got some new affordable housing coming in Matson, 35 new homes in Coney Hill, and thinking about, in affordable homes, we need to make sure that they're big enough, that they have storage space, that rooms are generous, and that neighbours aren't all squashed together, because community means you need some space around you to want to choose to be connected to your neighbour. And therefore, some people moving into some houses haven't ever had that opportunity before. And if you haven't had that opportunity, then you might need to learn more about how to do things. And the fly tipping bit, I thought, who does that? Well, parents done it. People who don't know that that's not the right thing to do. They don't know that the council, for I think £26 something, will pick up 3 bulky items and take them away. So rather than have a big fine, couldn't you do something about connecting more to the council? And couldn't the council help make people more aware of what they do in order to stop the fly tipping? So new housing, terrific. And fly tipping, we've got to do more than punish people. We've got to help people find a way to not do it, as opposed to telling them off when we've caught them.
Okay, thank you ever so much for that. Joe, what have you picked out for this week's punchlines, please?
I picked out a story in relation to Hufkins, who are celebrating 135 years in June this year. And I noted that they have a founder called George Tickham. And they are going to be doing a bit of a celebrations. As part of their celebrations are going to be a bit of a nod to anyone called George. So I've had a quick look, and I've noted that amongst our volunteers and clients, we've got 10 Georges and 2 Georginas. So I don't know if they'll be able to benefit from the celebrations, but that would be lovely. They're only about 50 yards away from the entrance to our charity offices in Morton. which is always rather dangerous. If you've been having rather a bad day and you need a bit of a treat, then obviously that's a potential place to go. So that was my story.
Thank you very much. And do you know they sell them in John Lewis's and also in Japan? Big in Japan, Huffkins. Talitha, what have you picked for Punchline? Just very quickly.
Oh, I'm very excited about the new leadership for the Gloucestershire County Council. We've got Lisa Spivey. She was my local councillor. I've had lots of chats with her. She's, you know, it's just so lovely to get genuine, authentic people into power, which is very limited in this day and age. And I'm absolutely thrilled. She's got a big job ahead of her, but I'm thrilled. And on the side of that, Chloe Turner, is leader of the Stroud District Council, and I'm thrilled because she's absolutely brilliant. And so I'm just thrilled at the new faces, and it just gives us a bit of motivation and inspiration that you know, we can all work together maybe a bit better.
Totally agree. Thank you for that. And Julie, you've got something you want to plug for Pied Piper appeals coming down the road.
Oh, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, this Sunday is the Pied Piper Open Gardens. If you like going to Open Gardens, it's all in aid of Pied Piper this Sunday. You walk around, have lovely cake. But the following Sunday is our big event of the year. Classic cars, trucks and gardens. Over 300 cars are already booked in, so it'll probably hit 400 classic cars. And people just go and sit and have their picnics. They love you to open the doors and look inside their cars. But there's also something for everyone. So there's rides and amusements, a massive raffle. The kids, there's loads of stuff for the kids. And because kids are free, the parents are more likely to let them go on the go-karts and everything. It's only £10 an adult. Kids are free. We just want you to come and have a fabulous time. And I've looked at the weather because it's all weather dependent, really. The weather is fine. And we must, of course, mention across in front of the house are the big special cars. Roger Head owns a couple of them. Nick Brodie owns a couple. His Birkin Racer, one in only, appeared last year, but he has a second on the way. So he's hoping that his second Birkin Racer will be there for, and of course the fanatics absolutely love it. But there's lots going on.
So you didn't mention it's at Hynham Court.
Oh, it's at Hynham Court.
and what date is that, Julie?
It's week Sunday, June the 8th, and it's 10 till 4. And Hynham Court, everyone knows it's on the Ross Road out of Gloucester. And Roger, who owns it, is our chair. Well, he was recently stepped down.
Okay, and Punchline will be there with our own gazebo raising money for you this year as well.
Yes, I'm looking forward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a go on the stall.
We will be doing a special pickleball thing going on. That's the general thing.
Yeah.
My gazebo has just arrived yesterday. So I talk about volunteering and things like this. Actually, my colleague, Bethany, who talked about, you know, building somebody up and management stuff, and she is organising it all as well and sorting it out. Anyway, thank you ever so much. I just want to thank my fantastic panel. Thank you all for joining the show. If you've our wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood Accountants and Business Advisors, we couldn't do this show without them. And also to thank you all for watching. If you like the show, please like, share and subscribe, and we'll be back again next week. But until then, remember, it's all in the Punchline. Thanks very much. Bye.